A journey of Imam, Madina to Karbala. A journey of Imam, Madina to Karbala.
Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidil Mursaleen. Amma ba'd, fa'a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalatu wassalamu alayka ya Rasulallah wa ala alika wa ashabika ya Habiballah. Assalatu wassalamu alayka ya Nabiyallah wa ala alika wa ashabika ya Nurallah. Sallallahu ta'ala ala Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. My dear Islamic brothers and viewers of Madani Channel, there are many blessings of reciting through the Pak upon Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Indeed, Aka sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam is said that on the day of judgment there will be no shade. But three fortunate people will be in the shade of the Arsh of Allah Azza wa Jal. The first of those, the one who frees my ummati of a difficulty and a distress. The second, who revives my sunnah. And the third, the one who recites Durood Pak upon me in abundance in this world. Sallu ala al-Habib sallallahu ta'ala ala Muhammad sallallahu. My dear Islamic brothers and viewers of Madani Channel, in the last episode we learnt that Hazrat Imam Ali Maqam, Hazrat Imam Hussain radiyallahu ta'ala anhu travelled from Medina to Mecca, and from Mecca to Muharram to the plains of Karbala, and how the family of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was met by the Yazidi army, and how they were martyred. Allahu Akbar. On that journey, just to give you a glimpse of the power of Hazrat Imam Ali Maqam, Hazrat Imam Hussain radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, and what he had at his disposal, but he decided to exercise patience to achieve high status. His name will be remembered till the day of Qiyamah because of the great sacrifice that he gave. His power on the journey from Madina Pak to Makkah Mukarramah. He's met by Sayyiduna Ibn Muti radiyallahu ta'ala, who requests, Hazrat, my well is drying up. Please make dua. Hazrat Sayyidina Imam Hussain radiyallahu ta'ala says, go and fetch some water. The water is brought in a bucket. It is presented to the great Imam. Hazrat Imam Ali Maqam radiyallahu ta'ala sips some water, gargles and spits it back into the, pours it back into the bucket. Water is then poured into the well. Hazrat Sayyidina Ibn Muti says that the well not only started to produce water, but it became substantially sweeter than before. Subhanallah. Allahu Akbar. Hazrat Imam Ali Maqam, Hazrat Imam Hussain radiyallahu ta'ala on the 10th of Muharram tells the Yazidi army about the excellence of his noble family. He delivers a sermon to the Yazidi army, leaving no room for excuses, clarifying everything. And a badbakht, an unfortunate foul-mouthed Yazidi, Malik bin Urwa, looks towards the fire that has been lit near the trenches of the family of Hazrat Imam Ali Maqam, Hazrat Imam Hussain radiyallahu ta'ala. And he says, O Hussain, you have lit this fire before that of the hereafter. Hazrat Imam Hussain radiyallahu ta'ala replies, O enemy of Allah, you are a liar. You mean that I will be going to hell? Allahu Akbar. A devotee, a companion of the great Imam says, give me permission to shoot an arrow in his mouth. Hazrat Imam Ali Maqam says to Sayyidina Muslim bin Awasaj radiyallahu ta'ala, no, we don't want to start anything. I don't want to be the one who makes the initial attack. he raises his hands in the court of Allah Azza wa Jal and says, O Rabbi Kahar Azza wa Jal, make this wicked suffer punishment of worldly fire before the torment of the hellfire. In front of the entire Yazidi army, it's seen that this prayer of the great Imam is answered instantly. The hoof of the horse he's on steps into a ditch. This jolts the horse forward. This person who had uttered these insulting words towards Hazrat Imam Ali Muqam, he falls off the back of his horse, but his foot stays in the stirrup. The horse starts to gallop forwards, dragging him along the ground, and eventually throwing him inside the trench that was filled with fire. And in front of the entire Yazidi army, he burns to death. Yet despite this, the Yazidi army do not take a lesson. Hazrat Imam Hussain radiallahu ta'ala anhu immediately goes into prostration and thanks Allah Azza wa Jal. He's grateful and says, Oh Allah, I'm grateful to you for punishing the one who was insulting the family of your beloved Habib sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Another dreadful Yazidi comes up. Instead of learning a lesson from what's happened, he comes out with another comment. A comment which hurts Hazrat Imam Ali Muqam, Hazrat Imam Hussain radiallahu ta'ala. Because what he says is, you have no relation to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Hearing this, Hazrat Imam Ali Muqam radiallahu ta'ala is just shocked. He supplicates in the court of Allah, Ya Allah, punish this rude person. Within a short time, this man, he has the pangs of wanting to go to the toilet. So he comes down off his horse and runs to behind a rock. He takes his clothes off and is about to relieve himself when he's bit by a black scorpion. He runs around, covered in muck, wailing, and eventually falls dead in a dire state, disgracefully suffering a despicable death. Allahu Akbar. This is all happening in front of the Yazidi army. And at the moment, all the Imam has done is just raised his hands in the court of Allah Azza wa Jal. And yet this is the anjam. Another from the Yazidi army comes forward. Their desires of worldly wealth had meant that they were blinded. They could not see what was happening before them. He rudely looks at Hazrat Imam Ali Muqam radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And he says, look, the river Euphrates is here, but you cannot have any water from it. Allahu Akbar. You will not get a single drop. You will die of thirst. Allahu Akbar. How ignorant these people were. How foolish they were. And how hard-hearted they were. You are talking to the grandson of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The very prophet you claim to follow. And yet you are saying to this amazing personality that you are not going to get a drop of water and you're going to die of thirst. Allahu Akbar. The shaitan had truly taken over them. Sayyiduna Imam Hussain radiallahu ta'ala anhu raised his hands in the court of Allah Azza wa Jal and said, Ya Allah, make him die out of thirst. As soon as Hazrat Imam Ali Muqam, Hazrat Imam Hussain radiallahu ta'ala anhu had finished the supplication, the horse of this insolent Yazidi galloped abruptly out of fright. The Yazidi ran after him, chased his horse, chased and chased and chased till he became thirsty. And then he repeatedly said, I'm thirsty, I'm thirsty. But when water would be brought to him, he could not drink it, and not even a single drop went down his throat, and eventually he died of thirst. Allahu Akbar. If one looks at the journey of Karbala, the journey to Karbala, and what happened in the plains of Karbala, without doubt, there was miracle after miracle, karamat after karamat of Hazrat Imam Ali Muqam, Hazrat Imam Hussain radiallahu ta'ala anhu. But the test was different. The test was one of patience and perseverance. And Hazrat Imam Ali Muqam radiallahu ta'ala anhu in the plains of Karbala set the standard for this. In the love of Allah and His beloved Habib sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Not only did he sacrifice his children, but he adorned the Imam Sharif of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He took the talwar, the sword of Hazrat Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu Zulfiqar, and he went into the field, into the battle. And he announced to the Yazidis, he told them what they were doing. He said, you had been blinded by the wealth of this world. But they weren't going to listen. This lion of Allah fought bravely, courageously. But eventually, he became martyred. But on the plains of Karbala, he left a message to the entire world till the day of Qiyamah. At the time of his martyrdom, Hazrat Imam Hussain, Hazrat Imam Ali Muqam radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, placed his head in prostration. His head was severed from the Mubarak body, and the Yazidi army took it as a trophy. How despicable were these people that they marched, they ran horses over the bodies of the Ahl Bayt, the children of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. How blind they were. My dear Islamic brothers and viewers of Madani Channel, the head of Hazrat Imam Ali Muqam radiyallahu ta'ala is carried. There were many, many miracles, saintly miracles and karamat of this blessed head Mubarak. Qawli bin Yazid, a badbakht, a despicable person, he takes the head and he brings it home. He puts it in the house on the floor and places a pan over it. And then says to his wife, I've got something special today. She says, what? He says, I have brought to you the biggest wealth in the world. Look, I have the head of Sayyiduna Hussain ibn Ali radiallahu ta'ala. It's lying over there in our home. His wife gets up and says, may Allah curse you. People bring gold and silver, and you have brought the head of the son of the blessed Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. By Allah, I will not live with you anymore. Saying this, she rises up, and it is narrated that she says, by Allah, I saw a bright light from the sky beaming upon this pan. It was like a pillar, and there were white birds flying around it. In the morning, Kholi bin Yazid takes the blessed Sar Mubarak to the court of Ibn Ziyad. Allahu Akbar. Greedy for money, greedy for power, and pleasing Yazid and his commanders. These people put the heads of the martyrs on spears. And justice is done in this way, that the spears are thrusted high, and even after they leave this world, the family of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam stand high, their heads above everybody else. Allahu Akbar. Then Mukhtar Saqfi comes along, and eventually he finds one after the other of those who martyred the family of the Prophet, and he tortures them and he kills them. Allahu Akbar. Every one of them met their death at the hands of Mukhtar. Sayyidina Zayd bin Arqam radiyallahu ta'ala anhu says, when Yazidi comrades raised the Mubarak head, the blessed head of Sayyidina Imam Ali Muqam, Sayyidina Imam Hussain radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, on top of a spear and paraded it through the streets of Kufa. At that time, I was upstairs in my house, and when the beautiful Sar Mubarak passed by, I heard the head reciting the verse of the Quran from the Surah Al-Kahf, translation from Kanzul Iman. Did you come to know that the men of the cave and of the jungle side were a wonderful sign of ours? Allahu Akbar. And then some other saints of Islam have written that others witnessed the Sar Mubarak, the head Mubarak of Hazrat Imam Ali Muqam, Hazrat Imam Hussain radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, reciting the Quran, the blessed and sacred lips moving and reciting from Surah Ibrahim, verse 42, translation from Kanzul Iman. and do not ever think that Allah is unaware of the doings of the oppressors. Allahu Akbar. My dear Islamic brothers and viewers of Madani Channel, that even the Sir Mubarak of Hazrat Imam Ali Maqam radiyallahu ta'ala anhu continued to recite the Quran after it had been detached from the body. Allahu Akbar. This is the love that Hazrat Imam Ali Maqam, Hazrat Imam Hussain radiyallahu ta'ala anhu had for the Quran. Hazrat Minhal bin Amr reported that I was in Damascus at the time. By Allah, I saw with my own eyes when the people were parading the blessed head of Hazrat Imam Ali Maqam on top of a spear. A person was reciting Surah Al-Kahf in front of the blessed head. And when it reached the verse 9, translation from Kanzul Iman, the men of the cave and of the jungle side were a wonderful sign of ours. Allah Azza wa Jal granted the blessed head the capability to speak, and the blessed head spoke out remarkably, saying, my murder and roaming around with my head is stranger than the event of the Ashab-e-Kahf. Allahu Akbar. Hazrat Allama Maulana Na'imuddin Muradabadi says, in fact, this is true, because in the case of the Sahaba-e-Kahf, unbelievers committed the oppression, whereas in the case of Sayyiduna Imam Ali Maqam radiyallahu ta'ala, it was the ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam who had invited him as a guest and then deceitfully deprived him of water and food, and then martyred the companions before the eyes of the great Imam Ali Maqam and the Ahl Bayt. Allahu Akbar. My dear Islamic brothers and viewers of Madani Channel, the blessed head of Hazrat Imam Ali Maqam radiyallahu ta'ala anhu is on a spear. It has been taken on a journey and has been taken towards Yazid. A Christian monk sees the blessed head from his church and he asks, what is this? He is told that this is the Sar Mubarak, this is the blessed head of the grandson of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He says, you people are awful and horrific and bad. Will you be happy with 10,000 dinars, gold coins, for leaving this head with me for one night? The greedy Yazidis agree to this. They accept the offer. This priest, monk, Christian, he takes the Sar Mubarak. He washes it. He perfumes it. And he keeps it clutched all night, close to him, looking at it throughout the night. And he sees beams of light emerging from the Sar Mubarak. In some riwayats it says he could hear the recitation of the Quran from the blessed mouth of Hazrat Imam Ali Maqam radiyallahu ta'ala. He spends all night crying in the love of the Ahl Bayt of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, crying in the events that had happened. And in the morning, he embraces Islam. He abandons the church, he abandons everything else, and spends the rest of his life serving the Ahl Bayt of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. These were the fortunate people who saw the status of the family of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Unfortunately, the Yazidis, all they saw was money and the world and greed. The blessed head of Hazrat Imam Ali Maqam radiyallahu ta'ala anhu was eventually buried. Allahu Akbar. My dear Islamic brothers and viewers of Madani Channel, we've heard how the great Imam Ali Maqam radiyallahu ta'ala anhu gave his life to save the deen of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to not let any Yazid who was fond of drinking and alcohol and everything else that came with it, not to let him dilute Islam. Hazrat Imam Ali Maqam radiyallahu ta'ala anhu taught us from the journey of Medina that we had to make sacrifices. He taught us on the journey to Karbala, when one looked at the tents, everybody was busy in worshipping Allah Azza wa Jal. The whole caravan of Hazrat Imam Ali Maqam radiyallahu ta'ala anhu was a caravan of obedience in the court of Allah and His beloved Habib sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. What one found in the tents that were pitched on the plains of Karbala was the Yazidi army who were enjoying themselves, waiting for battle. And you had the companions of Hazrat Imam Ali Muqam radiyallahu ta'ala anhu busy in the recitation of the Quran. There was no water for them to do wuzu, but yet they did tayammum, but made sure they didn't miss their salah. There was nothing there for them, nothing to eat, nothing to drink, but they quenched their thirst with the recitation of the Quran. Pick up the books of history. They say that the one thing you could hear from the tents of the Ahlul Bayt was the recitation of the Quran. The love of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was beaming out at all angles, and they were ready to sacrifice everything in the love of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Look at the books of history. They will tell you that the mothers of the believers, the Ahlul Bayt, the family of Hazrat Imam Ali Muqam radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, they were veiled. Their children were being martyred, but yet they remained patient and never confronted the Yazidi army. My dear Islamic brothers and viewers of Madani Channel, there are great lessons for us to learn. Today, if we have a small problem, we start to miss our namaz. What did Imam Ali Muqam radiyallahu ta'ala teach us? On the plains of Karbala, his children are being martyred. He is in grave difficulty. There's no water for 3 days. There's no food. But nobody misses their salah. They were in such difficult conditions. But the message they left was this: no matter what difficulty you are in, never miss your salah, because that is true destruction. Then, they were in grave danger, but they didn't let go of the Quran. They continued to read the Quran. Look at the plains of Karbala. Hazrat Imam Ali Muqam radiyallahu ta'ala anhu continues to pray and is martyred in prostration. And today we miss our salah. Hazrat Imam Ali Muqam radiyallahu ta'ala anhu loved the Quran so much that the khayma, the tents of the Ahlul Bayt, one could hear the recitation of the Quran even after the martyrdom of Hazrat Imam Ali Muqam radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. There's account after account after account of how the Sare Mubarak, the head Mubarak, the beautiful head of Hazrat Imam Ali Muqam continued to recite the Quran. And today, that Quran is gathering dust on our shelves. Allahu Akbar. Hazrat Imam Ali Muqam radiyallahu ta'ala anhu did this so that we would become namazi. We would become those who prostrate in the court of Allah Azza wa Jal. He didn't want us to follow the ways of Yazid and ignore our namaz. Today, if that's what we're doing, then ask yourself, who are we following? We claim to follow Hazrat Imam Ali Muqam radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. We claim to be devotees of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We shed tears in the love of the Ahlul Bayt. But when it comes to acting at the time of Fajr, if we are asleep, tell me this, are those the actions of Imam Ali Muqam radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, or are those the actions of Yazid? Today, if we've got time for newspapers and everything else, but we don't read the Quran, tell me this, is that the way of Imam Ali Muqam radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, or is that the way of Yazid? Today, if we do not learn and act upon the sunnahs of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and we ignore the rights of Aka sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, then are we on the way of Yazid, or are we on the way of the great Hazrat Imam Ali Muqam radiyallahu ta'ala anhu? It's a choice. Drinking, that is the way of Yazid. Gambling, that is the way of Yazid. Drugs, that is the way of Yazid. Disrespecting parents, that is the way of Yazid. Dishonesty, that is the way of Yazid. Backbiting, that is the way of Yazid. Arrogance, that is the way of Yazid. Missing salah, that is the way of Yazid. Failure to remember Allah Azza wa Jal, that is the way of Yazid. Failure to fast, to be pious, that was the way of Yazid. Changing the deen to suit your own needs, that was the way of Yazid. He was such a despicable person that after this, he continues, he attacks the Kaaba, he brings horses into Masjid Nabawi Sharif, he does all sorts of despicable acts in the beautiful Shahr of Madina Sharif. This is how despicable he was. And if through our actions we start to follow him, then how can we claim to be the ashiq of Hazrat Imam Ali Muqam radiallahu ta'ala? On the day of judgment, we cannot deceive anybody. If our actions take us towards the Yazidi path, how on the day of judgment are we going to face Hazrat Imam Ali Muqam radiallahu ta'ala, who for us sacrificed everything on the plains of Karbala, who for us, to protect us from drinking, from backbiting, from gambling, from drugs, from missing salah, from not reading the Quran. He gave everything so that we would inherit the beautiful Islam in its beautiful form. And yet today, if we miss these, then are we doing justice to that great, great sacrifice? Allahu Akbar. My dear Islamic brothers and viewers of Madani Channel, let me share with you this. After the events of Karbala, one of the Yazidi commanders fell out of favor with him. And Yazid asked for him to be arrested. So he ran and he came to Medina. And at the time of Karbala, there was a son of Hazrat Imam Ali Muqam, Hazrat Imam Hussain radiallahu ta'ala anhu, Hazrat Zainul Abidin radiallahu ta'ala anhu, who was too ill to fight. And even though he sought permission from his father, he wasn't given permission. He was chained up and brought to Kufa and then to Damascus, and eventually returned to Medina. So they're living their life in Medina after this great tragedy. And this Yazidi commander, who Yazid no longer likes, and this Yazidi commander was in the forge who martyred the family of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He comes to Medina and he's seeking refuge. He wants somewhere safety. And he comes to the house of Hazrat Zainul Abidin radiallahu ta'ala. And he says, I'm a guest, I'm a traveler, can I stay with you? Hazrat Imam Zainul Abidin radiallahu ta'ala who takes him in, asks the servant to prepare food, look after him, give him a good bed, give him good clothes, give him everything. For 3 days he remains there. And Hazrat Zainul Abidin radiallahu ta'ala looks after him and serves him and helps him. Eventually, he wants to leave. Hazrat Imam Zainul Abidin radiallahu ta'ala arranges for his provision for the journey and gives him extra so that he's safe on his journey. He's thinking to himself, look at what we did on the plains of Karbala. And this is Imam Zainul Abidin. And he's treated me 3 days. He's kept me in his house. He's treated me with utmost respect and honor. He's given me provisions. And now that I'm going, he's given me more. As he starts to walk off, he can't bear it anymore. He turns to the great Imam and he says, Hazrat, I don't think you recognize me. I am one of those who was in the Yazidi army. And Hazrat Zainul Abidin radiallahu ta'ala says, okay, I recognize you from the days of Karbala. He says, well, Hazrat, you recognized me when I came to your doorstep. What is this? You treated me with so much respect and dignity. You helped me. What is this? Hazrat Zainul Abidin radiallahu ta'ala says that that was your character. And this is the character we have been taught by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. My dear Islamic brothers and viewers of Madani Channel, that waqia, that narration of Hazrat Zainul Abidin radiallahu ta'ala sums it all up beautifully. What Hazrat Imam Ali Muqam radiallahu ta'ala did in the face of adversity, in the face of difficulties, in the face of troubles, was never give up the Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Today, with our soft carpets, our hot water and our cozy beds, today we give up our salah. Today when we're earning a living, we give up our salah. Today when we're with family and friends, we're chilling out, we give up our salah. But Hazrat Imam Ali Muqam radiallahu ta'ala showed us that he didn't give up his salah even on the plains of Karbala after burying his children. Allahu Akbar. He told us, even on the plains of Karbala, and when his head was on a spear, he didn't give up the tilawat of the Quran. My dear Islamic brothers and viewers of Madani Channel, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, in the blessed environment of Dawat Islami, the love of the Ahl Bayt is taught in abundance. The sunnats of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, respect and honor of the Sahaba Ikram is taught in abundance. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, by attending the Thursday Ijtimaz of Dawat Islami, by watching the Madani Muzakaras of Amir al-Sunnat Damat Barakatum al-Aliyah, by attending the Madani Qaflas of Dawat Islami, we develop a love and respect for the Ahl Bayt and for the Sahaba Ikram, the companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And not only that, we learn how to improve our lives and follow in the footsteps of Hazrat Imam Hussain radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. The great sacrifice of the great Imam will be remembered for as long as the world is. The tribute is paid to his patience, his fortitude and his perseverance. His courage was amazing. His propagation of Islam was superb. Even in his martyrdom, there was life for Islamic teachings, and a lesson and an inspiration for us. May Allah Azza wa Jal give us the ability to follow in the footsteps of Hazrat Imam Ali Muqam and give his sacrifice maximum respect by making sure that we never miss our salah. Give his sacrifice maximum honor and respect by making sure that we recite the Quran every day. Give his sacrifice the maximum honor and respect that it deserves by learning the sunnahs of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and spending our life in the obedience of Allah and his beloved Habib sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ameen bijahin Nabil Ameen sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
A journey of Imam, Madina to Karbala. A journey of Imam, Madina to Karbala.